It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and today we are going to be talking Cleveland sports like we normally do with Will Burge. Will Burge, currently of WTAM. He's been everywhere, though, man. He wrote about the Browns for Bleacher Report. He was at WKNR way back when. He even had a little bit of time at 92.3 The Fan. So he's at WTAM. He's always got an interesting perspective. He's pretty well connected. So he's got not only an interesting take, but an informed take. So we're going to talk about all the different things going on in Cleveland sports. But before we get there, I'm going to tell you about Patreon. We've got over 50 people supporting us on Patreon, taking advantage of the different kinds of things we're doing. Nobody has to go on Patreon. We still give you Waiting for Next Year as you've come to enjoy it for free, but this helps us build it to the next level. We keep having meetings to figure out what we're going to do next, and we do have a lot of plans for the new year. So support us if you can. We'll try and make it worth your while. We've done T-shirts already. We've got stickers that have shipped. They've shipped to me, and then I will counter ship them or something, drop ship them to you. We have a special discount code at GVArt that only people at Patreon know. It's 15% off. So if you want incentives, bonuses like these, go to patreon.com/WFNY, patreon.com/WFNY, and support us. Pick a level, and you'll have access to all that cool stuff too. That's patreon.com/WFNY. Here's Will Burge.
Waiting for next year.
Will Burge is on the other end of the line. How's it going, Will?
It's good, man. Good. It's a nice, beautiful, sunny day outside.
I know, 50 degrees in February. It's either like the end of the world or really nice.
Yeah, well, if this is the end of the world, then bring it on, baby.
So before I dialed you up here, I was listening to Bomani Jones from his Monday show. He was recapping the weekend. He was talking about the Oklahoma City versus Golden State game and Kevin Durant, and he obviously had to bring up LeBron's first time back in Cleveland, as a member of the Miami Heat. But it just, regardless of all that and dragging that back into it, I was just so elated that the drama was happening somewhere other than Cleveland.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, I don't know if you remember, that week was crazy. I mean, it was not just crazy because the media circus was in town and because there was so much vitriol and anger towards LeBron, but it was crazy because people who had nothing to do with it, all of them were also watching us, and they were waiting to see what Cleveland would do that was crazy, or the jilted ex-lover and all those storylines. And it was kind of nice to see someone else going, even though you don't want to see anybody go through it. But it was nice that it wasn't happening here in Cleveland. The unfortunate part of that whole thing was, just like the Cavaliers, they just were outgunned that day. The Cavs team was in no way equipped to battle that LeBron James, Dwayne Wade Heat team. And yeah, the Thunder have Russell Westbrook, but it's literally Russell Westbrook and a bunch of guys versus the best team in the NBA right now. So on-court stuff, it was, obviously didn't live up to the hype. And, Russell probably shouldn't have waited till he was down 20 to start running his mouth and all that type of stuff. But in sports, these are the fun things. We're going to remember that 20 years from now. You're going to remember that night, even though the game wasn't very good.
So it's a very strange, too, because, like, on the one hand, I don't really blame Cavaliers fans for acting to a certain degree, but I think it probably got a little bit out of control, maybe a little bit over the top. But the same media that eggs this stuff on is the first one to criticize fans for acting this way. It's a kind of a weird scenario.
Yeah, it's the click cycle. So first you hype everybody up so they're clicking on it and they're getting excited about it, or they're ready to watch the ratings. And then once it happens, you scold them and tell them how bad they are, so the rest of the country jumps on and goes, yeah, they're crazy out there. And then people here get angry and they still read the articles anyway. This is a bigger problem than just in sports. And I don't even know if it's necessarily a problem as much as people want to say it is. People need to understand that the line between news and opinion in sports and politics and everything has been so blurred because, the big news networks can blame blogs and blogs can say they're fine, but everybody's kind of complicit in this. Big news networks, they'll run an analyst up with a beat reporter, and they'll never tell you who's who, and they're both throwing opinions out there, and you see the same thing in just about everything in life now, like I said, politics, sports, no matter what it is. So I think that line, there used to be a clear delineation 15, 20 years ago of, okay, this is my news, these are the facts, this person gives me opinion, I choose whether or not to like his or her opinion. And that's the point where everything has become opinion/news, which then you get to people screaming fake news, and I don't like this, and the vitriol back at the media. It's become a really messy thing. I think we as consumers, both in sports and politics and everything else, we need to start to decide, okay, I need to figure out what actually is real and what isn't real, and not just go, oh, that's fake news because I don't like it. There are still facts being reported. I think you just got to do a little more work to find them.
Yeah, it's really hard, too, because on the one hand, you're trying to create content. And as a blog, I know what that's like. And you spent some time at Bleacher Report, so you know what it's like to create content. But Deadspin, and there are certainly guilty actors around the Cleveland area, but Deadspin has pointed out, I can't even remember which draft analyst it was, but, at 8:30 on Mike and Mike, a draft analyst will say something about a prospect, and then they'll spend the whole rest of the day, it'll be a topic of conversation on this show, and then there'll be a counterpoint article posted on ESPN Insider, and all of a sudden they've taken one person's opinion, whether it's like Mortensen or somebody, and it's become this content thing that was totally created kind of out of thin air.
Yeah, it's creating news out of your own analysis. And that's what I'm talking about, where that line has become so blurred. Sorry, my 2-pound dog is quacking at the door for some reason.
No worries.
But yeah, he sounds like a duck, doesn't he? Did you hear him?
Yeah.
He's like 15 weeks and he sounds like a duck. It's the craziest thing on earth. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm talking about, that line being blurred between opinion and news. And that's part of the problem, is you see news networks that will throw an analyst up, they'll have an opinion, and they take that opinion, it becomes a topic for the rest of the day. So now when you get 2, 3, 4 steps down the line, to find that news, you really have to dig all the way back to the beginning, and it might just be one reported fact that someone had a statement on, or there might not even be facts at the beginning of it. A Mel Kiper or a Todd McShay, what facts are they really going on? The only facts they go on are, A, what they hear from scouts, and B, what the exact times are in the combine or what stats they might have had. Everything else is conjecture, and that's what makes it so tough to judge.
So you've spent a long time in radio, and you're currently in radio. How have you had interactions with producers and things like that where there's like a station-wide content for the day where every show's got to hit on these same 3 or 4 things? Or, I mean, is that like an effective way to run a radio station and drive programming for an entire day?
I got to say, Aaron Goldhammer gets a lot of criticism over at 850, and I heard people accused him of that, setting the agenda for the day. This is what we're going to push. But we never had that there ever. There was never, these are the things you have to hit on. They left it up to you to figure out what your own hot button would be, what you would like to talk about. And, when we were doing 3 Deep over there, we went in a different route than everybody else almost every day. Unless there was something really crazy big going on. And at 1100, we don't have that either. They don't really poke or prod into your content that you put on air there, which I love, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I've heard of plenty of radio stations that do that. I've talked to people in other parts of the country. I'm not sure if 92.3 does that or not, but I know there are stations that will lay out, okay, these are the things that have to be hit on throughout the day. And no, I don't think that's effective, because I think the thing that makes a radio show good or bad is its individuality. And part of the individuality is deciding, hey, this is what we think should be talked about today. And I think when you get to ESPN, you see it. It's the exact same topics on every single show, and then they're just compiling opinions on top of each other to create new topics. You see it on CNN, you see it on Fox News, you see it on ABC. They start off in the morning with a news topic, and they'll put an analyst on to talk about that news topic, and the people reacting to that analyst, and then you see the politicians reacting to the analyst, which creates actual news. Now you've created news out of an opinion. So it just becomes this really this confounded blob that you can't really figure out where the middle is. And I think that's why everybody's having such a hard time with media in general these days.
It's funny that you mentioned Aaron Goldhammer, because I know him a little bit as well. And whether people like him or not, I understand any personality. People either like him or dislike him, present company included, and myself. But there's no bigger fan of radio, I don't think, in the market than Aaron Goldhammer. Like, I don't think people realize how much he reveres the medium, just in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, he does. And first of all, everyone loves me, Craig. Don't you ever levy those type of accusations my way. I have no haters whatsoever. But
certainly not on WTAM.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, everybody loves my opinions there. No, but I agree with you. I mean, he is. I know people. And the funny thing is, there was the old, his dad knows Craig Karmazin. That's how he got it. And Aaron played that up because Aaron knows how to play that role on the air. That's not the case. I mean, Aaron got that job because he literally worked in a church closet running KNR2 when they first bought that station by himself, the only person from that company in Cleveland, and grinded his ass off to get the opportunity he had to be the producer for Rizzo when he came in when they got 850. So, but he'll play that up, my dad's friends with, because it creates controversy. It gets people angry. It gets people passionate one way or the other.
He's a great wrestling heel.
He is. He's great. And that's why I think, as they went away from him with Rizzo, you saw the weaknesses exposed with him, because when Aaron tries to come back to the middle, people don't care anymore. He's already been the heel and he's so good at it. You have to have him with someone like a Rizzo, who's a dominant homer personality, who no matter what is just going to say the things that he thinks the fans want to hear. And then Hammer kind of plays the other side of that and goes, okay, well, I'll grab this side, even if maybe I don't believe it all that much. And that's why those shows work so well. And if you look around major markets, even on national radio, there's a lot of shows just like that. I mean, look at Dan LeBatard show is a great example of it. They take, Stugatz and Dan take the opposite side of a lot of different things on there. Stugatz wants to talk sports. Dan says it's stupid. People love it. They pick a side. And that's kind of, that's everything in life right now. Everybody wants to be on the winning side of something, even if there really isn't. Sometimes those sides are imaginary.
What's really funny about LeBatard's show is that there's a huge barrier to entry. You really have to get in there and understand kind of the dynamic. When I first heard that show, I took it too seriously, and I was like, I don't even understand what's going on here. And then you kind of start to get the tone that Dan LeBatard is. You'll figure out when he's truly serious about something, but it's not often.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I know there's a lot of people who don't like Dan LeBatard. I think, to me, that's genius radio, because you're able to listen to sports talk radio, and there still can give you, and we'll have guests on that have very educated opinions on it, but it's always constantly entertaining. And they can touch on more serious subjects and go off into some political or social issues, and that levity is never lost on the show. And if you want serious sports takes, then Stugatz puts the wig on and some lipstick and lays with his boxers up on the counter and is this hot sports take diva. You know what I mean? You get things, but you're also still getting levity at the same time. And to me, that's the best type of radio. This is entertainment at the end of the day. If you want to do strict news, we have news anchors at the top and bottom of every hour on WTAM. You can listen to them all you want. But most people, they don't want to be attached to a news broadcast. They want to be attached to something that has opinion and has some fun and some entertainment value.
So moving along a little bit out of the radio sector, you did spend a little bit of time at Bleacher Report, and over the last couple of days, they laid off about 50 people, and not in like a mean, hey, this business is dying kind of way, but in a further move kind of away from user submitted content. And I wondered if you had any kind of perspective on that, because you were kind of right in the middle of that journey between, hey, they're all user submitted, to, hey, we've hired actual reporters and writers, and you were kind of on that transitional professionalism phase of Bleacher Report.
Yeah, it was interesting. When they first reached out to me, they were the first ones to reach out to me when I got let go at KNR. And that was basically what they told me. They're like, look, we are moving away from user-generated content. We've already hired, this is the list of writers we've already hired. We're looking for real reporters, looking for young guys who have sources, guys who have, a little bit of a voice. And as they made these layoffs, to my understanding, and maybe I'm incorrect on this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of those layoffs were guys who were the very end of the user-generated content that had built themselves up to help create this foundation for them being able to hire the top-tier writers that they have at Bleacher Report now. But at some point in the evolution of this, Bleacher Report has turned themselves from what was at one point a complete joke. I mean, you know this, Craig. People, if you ever retweeted a Bleacher Report article or going on Facebook, people are like, okay, well, Joe Schmo in his basement wrote that, after he got home drunk from the game and was angry about it. So now these are really respected reporters. They break news. You take them seriously when they put something out there. So it can be done. I think you can kind of you build yourself up to something that is better than what you once were. But unfortunately, it's going to be at the expense of some of those early writers. And I know some people who wrote from there that weren't very happy about what just happened with these layoffs. As you said, it doesn't seem like it's a money thing. They're making money over there. It just seems like they want to take that money and move it back up to the top to bring in more quote-unquote reputable reporters for their site.
The reputation was well earned as kind of being a whole. They used to have really Google friendly headlines about where you could stream and watch, what time games were starting, like really little value add kind of content, and they have turned it around. It's funny to me though that as they've continued to try and progress past their history of slideshows and the kinds of things that they came to be a joke for, other organizations that used to be more well-respected have kind of taken that on to try and game the traffic system.
Yeah, and that's I was just going to say, everybody used to criticize them for slideshows. That was the huge thing there. But even when they started to move over to real journalism, and I was doing articles, I'm doing 5 a week for them, and 3 of them had to be slideshows, and I hated it at first. But then I looked around, and everybody moved to slideshows because you're getting more clicks per user on the page, you're getting more average page views, which is able to turn into more money for advertising. Yeah, I think it's just the natural progression of this industry. And now, with how fast the internet is and how well adapted the mobile internet is on your phone, the slideshows don't even really bother anybody anymore. I mean, I don't ever get angry when there's a slideshow because I can quickly finger through the thing and figure out exactly where I want to go. I think it's now that the technology is caught up with what they were doing originally just to get cheap page views. I don't think it's necessarily a cheap page views thing anymore. That's kind of the norm in this industry, which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm still kind of shocked at some of the slideshows I see put together and the kinds of content that people. I believe it was who was the Browns alum who got arrested for fraud? Reggie Rucker.
Oh, yeah.
So there was like. They were presenting the unfolding of the facts in slideshow format, and I was like, well, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's not how that should work. You know what I mean? That isn't the right way. And that was some of the fights I had when I was at Bleacher Report. They would say, hey, I want you to write this, and it's got to be at least 8 slides. And I'd be like, well, this isn't a slide article. And to be fair, and I don't know how much this has been out there, they were always really open. If they said, okay, well, if you don't feel that's a slide article, go ahead and make that one a normal one. And just one of the topics that you can pick each week, make one of those a slide article. They just had a certain amount that they wanted to have in there to make sure they were getting the right traffic. But I think they were open to debate and suggestions about editorially which ones fit as a slideshow and what didn't. I mean, if you're talking about draft prospects, slideshows actually work pretty damn well. You get a different picture for each guy. It's little content that loads up quickly. Now, if you're talking about a game breakdown, slideshows don't work. And I think that's the problem is other sites now have taken that and said, oh, okay, slideshows work. We're going to make everything a slideshow. And they completely overdo it. And it gets that's one of my issues with Cleveland.com is there's so many slideshows on there now too. And some of the stuff just doesn't need to be.
So where do you see it going next? I mean, obviously Bleacher Report has, they've invested in more multimedia. They've got GIF and video producers and all these different things going on. And obviously they're also putting all that through all their social channels. It's hard to predict where it's going to go next, though. It
is, but I think the writing's on the wall with video. I think the way Bleacher Report grabbed such a heavy market share was that they were the first ones who put their video stream, or I can't remember what it was called, out, and it streamed well onto phones. And was you're seeing what's happening in the cable TV industry, where people are cutting the cord and they're going a la carte. Now all of a sudden, your options aren't just ESPN, Fox, CNN, all these different things. You legitimately could have a Bleacher Report channel that streams all day long, that maybe it's repeating content here and there until they get their footing. But I think you're going to have actual TV channels from a lot of these different mediums. They're going to start competing with the big boys, and you're going to see cost cutting from the ESPNs and those to try to bring their overhead down. And you're going to see, as that some of that stuff falls to the ground, these littler channels be able to grab it and kind of rise up to the middle with it, which is going to create more options for you and I, and hopefully less cable bills and all those good things. But I think as more people have smart TVs, as more people are consuming their media on their phones, I think the next step is 24/7 channels you're going to see from the likes of Bleacher Report and some of these other websites.
With the evening of the playing field in terms of distribution, does it make any sense whatsoever what Fox Sports 1 is doing with Skip Bayless and spending all that money on talent?
No, I don't know. I don't know what the hell they're doing. My favorite is what's his name? Richard Deitch. Is that how you say his name?
Deitch, yeah.
However you say it. Yeah, Deitch. Who always like puts exactly what like the rerun of the Golden Girls beat Skip Bayless by like for 400,000 viewers or something like that. It's hilarious to me because they spent all this money and they picked up every personality that no one liked. They were all the ones that people put up with on ESPN because they were on the ESPN shows, and they put all this money into talent. You're seeing on the other end, ESPN has kind of gotten ahead of the curve, and they're starting to chop talent and lowering what they pay to people. Because here, in the end, Craig, you watch sports to watch this specific guy talk about sports? No. You want to see a breakdown, but does anybody care that Sean Salisbury hasn't been around a long time? No. I mean, and he was a huge personality at ESPN at one point. He demanded a six-figure contract. They told him to kick rocks, and the world went on without him. And I think that's what some of these, not only these sports personalities, but specifically the brands like FS1 need to realize, that people don't even care who's giving them the opinions. They just want to hear sports opinions.
Well, and on top of that, I want it more local, especially when it comes to the NFL. This is one of the things that I think the NFL does poorly, is that Major League Baseball gives us our local announcers, the NBA gives us our local announcers, and there's a lot of local media associated with that. The NFL treats all local things like cancer. Yeah.
Well, it feels like it's bigger than life, and that's going to come back to bite them if they don't start adjusting soon. They don't get that this is, people are consuming their media now, or their sports, in a social media environment, and they want hyper local. They don't, everybody loves the draft shows, right? But the fact that there's not a way to consume a draft show right before the regular draft that's hyper local and completely focused on what you want is crazy. Because what the hell do Browns fans care what the Falcons are going to do? What the hell do Browns fans care with what the Patriots are going to do, unless they're making some kind of trade with them and they can move into that spot? So I agree with you. I think the NBA does it best. To me, you have access in the NBA to all kinds of local stuff. They open up the credentials to a lot of local blogs and local-centric publications, and that's how it should be, because that's really what people want to hear about. There are other people who love the national stuff, and almost everybody who's a sports fan will listen to it. But if you have your choice, you're going to listen to things about your team. You want to consume information about your team specifically. And I agree with you. I think the NFL's fallen way behind on that. And they're not showing any signs of letting up, Craig. They keep strengthening the rules to make it harder for local publications and blogs to get access.
They really do. And Major League Baseball is probably a little bit too local, not enough national. The NFL is way too national, not enough local. I think you're right. The NBA's got it perfect.
Yeah, they're nailing it right on the head. The MLB over the last couple of years, I got to give them credit, because I've been really critical of how they were so slow to embrace social media and some of those things. And a lot of that's turned around in the last year, even though they're still not completely there. And maybe the NBA is a little too wild west, and we just like it because we can do whatever the hell we want and post whatever we want. But I think they get it. You're trying to attract young fans. Young fans are what builds the next 10 to 15 to 20 years of people are going to buy your tickets, they're going to buy your jerseys, and they're going to create new young fans as they have kids. And the NBA just gives all of it to kids. They give all of that content, all of that information for free to kids through social media. They make it really localized for the people who want the local. And as you said, they still have their national superstars that they're pushing as well, which we know kids can end up liking a team across the country just because of something, a commercial they see, or they hear them on an interview one time, or they meet him and get an autograph. It's about finding that happy medium. And I guess for my money right now, there is no better commissioner in sports than Adam Silver. And man, he's making a run at being one of the best ever if he keeps it up at this pace.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, because if you look at any of the other commissioners, they're like totally hated, completely and totally hated.
Yeah.
Adam Silver's got it's not even close for second most likable commissioner in professional sports.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Manfred's kind of just like a blah thing. We don't really know all that much about him yet. You know what I mean?
He hasn't ruined it yet.
Yeah, exactly. But it's crazy to think how liked he is after David Stern. David Stern was literally the devil. I mean, literally, David Stern was probably at least part devil. He was like second cousins with the devil. If that was, he was an awful commissioner in the end. I mean, he did so many good things many years ago, but in the latter years of his tenure, in his twilight, he was so hard-headed and so stubborn, and didn't embrace what the NBA was and embrace the youth that were starting to embrace the NBA. And now you see Adam Silver. I mean, just look at this thing with Charles Oakley. If this in any other sport, that would just be messy. they wouldn't even got involved in it. They just said, whatever, it's the Knicks, they're crazy, Dolan, he's an owner. But Adam Silver, I mean, right out of the gate, gets them all in one room, and there's reports now that the band's lifted on Oak. I mean, that's what a commissioner should be doing. He should be looking out for the best interest of not only the team, but also the fans, the people who are, you know, they love Charles Oakley, and they want to see him embraced by the Knicks, and they also want to see the Knicks be good. And Oak, yeah, maybe Oaks has said some things that have crossed the line, but he's passionate about his franchise, and that should be what they worry about.
No, and you're right. The NFL should be looking at what's happened in Cleveland over the last two owners, and they should have intervened. They should have intervened after Jimmy Haslam got indicted as part of Pilot Flying J just months after buying the team. Adam Silver probably would have done, oh, hey, mea culpa. We got to get this guy out of here. We approved this guy, and there's no way we ever should have.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem there is they kind of did intervene. I mean, they pushed Joe Banner onto Jimmy Haslam, and they said, this is the guy who's going to help you move things forward. And now that we look at it, Joe Banner might have been one of the few bright spots, or brighter spots, I should say, out of everything that happened there. But I just think Roger Goodell is so arrogant and believes that the upper echelon the ownership, and they're so untouchable, and no matter what, they're doing everything right because right now they're printing money. But they're not looking 5-10 years down the road, and they're certainly not looking, as you said, at a hyper-local level where people are sick of this Browns team. They are. They're just sick of it. I just went on the other day, and I was challenging anybody to tell me a worse franchise in sports, and no one could. Everybody they threw at me, I pull it up, and between the time the Browns came back and now, they had at least one good playoff run, which automatically makes you a better franchise. The only franchise that's even close right now that's heading full speed down crap highway is the New York Knicks. But even they were in the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2000 when the Browns just got back. I think it was 99. The first year the Browns got back. So, I mean, even they classify as a better franchise at this point. So, I mean, I agree with you. At some point, our crap doesn't stink because we own an NBA or NFL franchise and, you know, we're this good old boys club. Roger Goodell's got to take a step back and realize, hey, man, there's people that are paying money at the bottom who are sick of what's happening down there, and they're starting not to care.
Do you think there's any chance that the Browns got it right this time? Because, I mean, I haven't written these guys off yet, but, I mean, there's no benefit of the doubt left in my world.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you completely. I would not say, yeah, no, I think they're going to do it the right way because, I mean, why the hell would you think that? But I also don't look at it and say, oh, well, all hope is lost. These guys are terrible. Everybody wants to write off last year's draft. I think last year's draft was actually all that awful, and you really can't judge those things for a couple more years, especially when last year's draft was built for this year's draft. I mean, what they did last year was to set up this year, and this is it. I keep saying they have the resources to turn this thing around. Now you just got to hit. It takes an off season. It takes one. I mean, it happened in Oakland. Reggie McKenzie hit for a couple straight off seasons, but the home run was Khalil Mack and Derek Carr, and that laid the groundwork for what they're doing out there. It can be done, and they have all the resources in the world to get it done. Does Sashi Brown have my confidence? No, but you know, it's the opportunity's there.
Have you ever been less excited for the number one overall pick than you are right now?
You know, I hadn't really thought about that. No, I don't think so. I don't know. I actually, if they're going to take Myles Garrett, yeah, I am excited about it because I think Myles Garrett is that type of player you plug in and you just have a monster on your defense for the next, 7-8 years, and you don't have to worry about that spot. And I'm actually excited. It seems as though the Browns are just going to do the no-brainer and take who is widely regarded as the best player in the draft, which would be a departure from what we've seen from Browns regimes in the past, where they keep trying to outsmart the rest of the GMs because the franchise is so far behind, and then they miss, and it sets the franchise back even longer. So for the number one overall pick, I guess the excitement isn't there because there's not the intrigue of the superstar quarterback or anything. But I think the draft overall is pretty exciting because they have so many resources, and they could decide, hey, we want to come back up from 12 and get back in the top 7, or they go, you know what? The quarterbacks are falling. We'll move back from 12, acquire some more picks, and get the quarterback we want. Or we can move 12 and bring in a Jimmy Garappolo. I just think there's so many different options that it's pretty exciting what could happen overall in the draft. But the number one overall pick, I'm hoping at least, is locked into Garrett.
And you hit on the last point I wanted to get to. Are you in favor? Obviously, it depends on the price, but generically speaking, are you a Jimmy Garappolo fan?
I always tell people this, and this is the total scapegoat move, but I mean, I retired from quarterback evaluation because I thought Derek Carr was going to be an absolute bust, and he's an animal, and there's so many guys I thought were going to be good. They're terrible. What I would say is I don't like the argument that the price is too high for Garoppolo. If you identify him as a franchise quarterback moving forward, there really is no price too high. 12 is not too high, whatever. I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility. He was a second-round pick, and while everybody wants to say, oh, but you're going to trade with Bill Belichick, he's going to get the better of you. Yeah, but we also praise Bill Belichick for the players he drafts and finds throughout the draft, and Bill Belichick took this guy in the second round. So if you're going to praise him on one end for what he does in trades, you also have to praise him on the other end for what he does in the draft. So I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility. He could be that guy for you moving forward. My own personal opinion, I would like to see them bring in either a Garoppolo or a Tyrod Taylor type quarterback and draft someone, because I think what we've seen in the past couple of years is you can't have too many. And in far too often in Cleveland, we draft a quarterback and he's got to start playing, and then he's just damaged goods for the rest of his career.
How fast would you jump at the opportunity to trade the 2018 first-round pick for Jimmy Garappolo?
Ooh.
That's the one I thought of today, and I love that. I think you trade something this year and then the first in 2018.
Well, you know what I would rather do? I would rather not trade a pick this year. I'll give him Josh Gordon in 2018's first-round pick. Give me Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's something that Bill would certainly look at if he feels like they can straight out go, Gordon's not going to play here again. Gordon doesn't want to play here again. This team doesn't want him to play here again. I think it's about finding the place where you could send him. And maybe you wouldn't even need to go up a first-round pick if you're including Josh Gordon in the deal. I think they're going to take him and say, oh, well, there's not much value to him because he hasn't played. But if Bill is going to trade for him, then he knows that he can get something out of the guy. But I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think this is the year you're setting up to really put your franchise out there and take a step forward. And I think the Matt Flynn comparisons are really lazy. I think the Matt Castle comparisons are really lazy. You have to look at what the quarterback actually is, what his attributes are, and Garoppolo does physically have much greater attributes than both those guys. And, hey, you know what, Craig? If I was going to tell you can have Matt Castle for the next 5 years, who is basically, just a little bit lesser of a Matt Schaub, compared to what the Browns have had, would you really be that mad about it?
No, I mean, if you surround him, he's got the potential to be you can't tell me that he couldn't be Joe Flacco in the right scenario.
Yeah, and who knows, he might be more than that. And that's what I'm saying. That's the thing here is we really don't know. And I hate to say, you're basing it off 6 quarters. Yeah, I mean, you are, but you're basing all those guys in college off collegiate careers that really 90% of those collegiate careers don't translate whatsoever to the NFL.
I mean hell, RG3 was can't miss.
Exactly, yeah. And so, I don't know. Look, if you put a gun to my head, which way do I want to go? If you said, hey, that deal's on the table, I'd do that. I would trade next year's one for Garoppolo. I'm loading up on playmakers defensively and maybe get a tight end, and I'm signing free agent offensive linemen and defensive linemen to create depth there. And all of a sudden, this roster doesn't look too bad next season.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks so much for the time. It's always it always flies by when I get you on the phone and we start talking about stuff. And I love all the insight into the media topics. So I appreciate it very much.
And hey, before you go, let me 2 things. One, I appreciate you for not inciting any Kevin Love panic with me on here. That makes me happy. It'll be okay, people. If he comes back healthy, it doesn't matter because they're going to walk to the first round of playoffs anyway. And then also a news item to keep your eye on, something I actually just was reading a press release on right before we got on this call. The Q renovations, which seem to be, and I know we were at the panel discussion at the library out in, I don't know where the hell that was, Warrensville Heights or whatever, about this. The Greater Cleveland Congregations is ready to put up a fight. In fact, they're mobilizing a couple hundred people from the Greater Cleveland Congregations down at Quicken Loans Arena tonight, outside the arena, to protest the sweetheart deal they feel the county is giving or wants to give Dan Gilbert and the Cavs, and they want a dollar-for-dollar match and community investment. And for everybody just thinking that thing was going to get passed right through, no problem, I think there's going to be a little bit of fight on their hands with what's happening. It's something to keep an eye on.
Well, it could still pass right through. The real question is how big of a PR hit Dan Gilbert and the Cavs are willing to take, because it seems inevitable that they have to take a PR hit if they take an exorbitant amount of public money without some givebacks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the Greater Cleveland Congregations is actually part of a larger network, a nationwide network, that actually helped negotiate the deal for the Under Armour facility, where they said, all right, yeah, well, you can have some of the government money, of the county money down there, but you also have to kick back and help out the housing crisis that's happening out here that works there. I believe they're part of the Milwaukee new funding of their stadium, where they had to pay money back into the community as well. And I think I like that they're at least approaching with a realistic, you could say, hey, don't give him any money, but that's not realistic. You're going to have to give Dan Gilbert some money. That's just the weight he throws around in Cleveland. But to say, well, all right, we'll give you the money, but how about some community investment back to match some of this? I don't think that's outlandish. I don't think that's crazy to ask of. And I think it'll be met with a lot of people saying, yeah, why don't you do that? And I agree with you. If he just blows it off and goes the other direction, I think the GCC and possibly some other public figures, hopefully some other public figures around here, will make some noise and create a little bit of a PR hit for him.
I have a tiny bit of sympathy for Dan Gilbert, though, because I think that the philosophy around stadium financing needs work, but I don't think Dan Gilbert is being atrocious or more atrocious than what we've seen elsewhere. I think the tide's turning on the larger philosophical point, though.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, I said before, the Q needs renovations, and I'm not against giving Dan Gilbert the money for the renovations and matching. It's actually, they say it's $70 million. It's actually $160 million after interest. It just ends up being kind of a bad deal for the county when you look at, they're taking the money out of a tourism fund. That tourism fund, that's for future projects, and you say, okay, well, that's to bring in events here anyway. But yeah, you're giving that money for events that were already here. That tourism fund is to create new events and new attractions to bring new people to Cleveland. And then the other side of this for them is just the fact that you're living in the county with the number one infant mortality rate in the world. You have this opioid epidemic that's happening here as well. That the county should be using a lot of that money to fight other things. And while I don't disagree with giving the money to the Q, it'd be awesome for Dan Gilbert to be able to step up and say, okay, you know what, you're right. Maybe we should be a bigger part of this. And then one of the underlying factors that really doesn't get brought up a lot is the fact that they're saying they need Q renovations to have better events at Quicken Loans Arena. But that's not really the case. I mean, there is no events at Quicken Loans Arena that don't come because the Q isn't good enough. They don't come because there's an 8% seat tax. And the way they're paying for this is they're extending that seat tax. And that's kind of unprecedented in the country for a major city to have an 8% seat tax. That means any promoter or anybody who's doing anything event-wise at the Q, right off the top, they're cutting an 8% of their profits over to the county right away. All them, not even profits, 8% of the money that comes in over to the county. And if you're a promoter working with a 20% profit margin, you're cutting off almost half of your profit margin before you even throw the event. So that's a little kind of double talk there, where they say, hey, we can bring in new, bigger events, but being in the music promotion industry, I know that the reason those events aren't there is because it's 8% seat tax. So I think there's still going to be some tweaking on this deal as we move forward before it gets passed. Hopefully it does get passed, because I'd like to see the few renovations happen. I'm just hoping that the people of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County get a little something more out of it than just a nicer place to watch Cavs games.
Well, I agree with all that. I think the Q does need it, and I do think that there's probably a deal out there where everybody wins. I hope that they find it, and that everybody gets the PR and everybody gets the financial investment in the community as well, because the community definitely needs it.
Yeah, and this isn't an anti-Cavs thing at all. This is just a pro-Cleveland thing. I think everybody loves the Cavs and loves what Dan Gilbert's doing for the city, and it's just the fact that for years and years and years, the city of Cleveland and the county had no negotiating leg to stand on. They had to take whatever deal was brought their way, because they're basically begging for businesses and people to come to their area. That's not the case anymore. And when you have a little bit of leverage, I'd just like to see the county to use it.
Well, he's Will Burge from WTAM. When's the next time people can hear you?
I am on, tonight. I don't know when you're going to post this thing, but I'm on tonight, the sports feed 6 to 7, and then Cavs preview show for tonight's game. And then I don't know what the hell else I'm on. I'm on all the time. I got
something this weekend.
Yeah, I'll be on this weekend 3 to 6. And Nick Domino's out in Goodyear, so I'll be on a lot of evenings throughout this month. Whatever. Just follow me on Twitter at Will Burge. I usually tweet it.
Good stuff, man. Thanks so much.
All right, take care, Greg.
Thanks for listening, everybody. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.